Good evening to those in the UK, and obviously, Chris, not for you. Thank you so much for getting up early to give this talk. Um, it's great to see people, and really looking forward to Chris's talk. Just a little bit of housekeeping to start with. If everybody other than the speaker could have themselves on mute for the duration of the talk, that would be great. I think most people are, but if everybody could just put themselves on mute. As I say, the talk's going to be recorded. I don't really want to say much more than to introduce our speaker this evening, Chris McMillan, professional teaching fellow at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. I think it says on your profile, Chris, but
Yeah.
I think probably best to leave you to introduce yourself in some more detail. I think the idea is that you're going to talk for about 30 minutes, and then we will have the opportunity for questions and discussion and see where it takes us. Without any more ado, then just pass over to you. And I've got somebody else coming in now, Robbie Wilton. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you, everyone, for spending your Saturday night with me. Professional teaching fellow is the worst title in the world. I'm a professional teaching fellow and an amateur research enthusiast, it seems, according to my university. But I will share a couple of slides with you. And as Jeremy suggests, I'll talk for maybe 30 minutes or perhaps less since I'm mortifyingly late. And then I'm really hoping we might have a bit of discussion about the state of cricket and media cricket. But what I'll do, I'll introduce myself here. Hopefully, given earlier difficulties, we can see my slides. So I'm not a cricket historian or statistician, but I am an absolute cricket obsessive. I've been playing poorly but competitively since I was seven or so, and here in New Zealand, and then I had 11 years or so in London playing for Kew Cricket Club, again quite poorly. And my claim to cricketing statistical fame is that I have a spreadsheet of all my cricket results since running from 1993, which has stayed up for slightly longer than I would have liked. But it's my batting statistic. We'll claim I'm a bowler and move on from that. So I have just got a great love for cricket, but most of my research was actually on things like climate change and migration and whatnot. And then the pandemic came, and I had to move back to New Zealand with kids, and things were a bit difficult. And I thought, well, why not just do what I love here? And I'll study cricket. And so I became a researcher on cricket and climate change and capitalism and all these things. And as is my way, and perhaps is the way with cricket in general, I found something that I loved cricket, and then I found ways to make it miserable by finding all the social issues within it. And the one I'm going to talk to you about today, I believe, is this article I wrote on media cricket and the sort of collision of media and Indian nationalism or nationalism in general. So I'm going to make it hopefully not an academic lecture. This is what I'm going to try and work through. Just going to talk to you a little bit about cricket's relationship to place and the environment, in particular to nationalism. And then these concepts of media sport and media cricket, and then think about how they kind of hit together with a collide with the populist nationalism that's risen out of in the 21st century, or re-risen, perhaps. And what I'm going to get to is this argument that cricket produced for media, or media cricket, hasn't been threatened specifically by nationalism, but instead's been a vehicle for Indian nationalism, but perhaps not other forms. But we can discuss and debate that as we go along. So, as I was suggesting, cricket is one of these games, and I want to position this, that has a really intimate relationship with the places in which it's played. And much of my research is actually on cricket and climate change. You know, with these things where there's an extra millimeter of grass left on the pitch, and we know this is or 3 or 4 millimeters. This is going to change the game. That the clouds are coming over Lords, and now it's going to swing, and everything's changing. We know that the places in which cricket is played is really vital for how it's played and for the cultures of it. We may well all have these books on our shelves of the most beautiful cricket grounds in the world. Place and environment are really important to cricket. And that's been the model for cricket for a long time. That there is a strong link, sorry, there's a sense that teams represent areas and players are representative of those areas. Obviously, we've had, traveling commercial 11s in the 19th century, which broke that model. But I think for the most part, particularly through international cricket, cricket was governed by, or for the good, nominally at least, of people in that local area, and that players were thought to be representative of that area. And this is particularly true when it comes to national identity. That, and apologies if I'm not Australian, as you may have hopefully picked up, but this seemed to be a nice little image of nationalism in cricket, or at least the way in which cricket, having spread from the British Empire, has become a key thread in the national identity for so many countries, or so, yeah, what, 10 countries, 10, 12 countries around the world, that has become their game. If you go to Melbourne and start saying we're playing English cricket, then that has a whole different vibe to it. So it's become cricket is a place-based game. It's one in which is strongly linked to these place-based regional identities, particularly national identities, that who we are as Sri Lankans, as Bangladeshi, as Indians, as maybe not New Zealanders, but Australians, is represented through cricket. And that's what cricket's been through much of its kind of modern existence as a sport. But then it's collided with something quite interesting. That's a terrible graphic that looked better yesterday. It looks horribly AI generated. It's collided with globalization and media sport, or the existence of global media sport. Now, cricket has always been, in its modern forms, a mediated game. That it spread through newspapers and was vital in the success of British newspapers. Like imperial cricket came through, or became popular and united the empire through telegrams and radios. But in the 80s and 90s, when we had the simultaneous development of kind of satellite television, satellite broadcasting, and the crashing down of various protections around media, which meant that we can now have a global media apparatus where sport was something watched in person, or if it's broadcast, then most likely from local areas, from nations. With the rise of satellite broadcasting and things like ESPN, the entertainment and sport, oh, I forgot the P, you can tell me later, network, you could start getting American television, televised American sport and American sporting culture coming to us. Now, this led with news, but it was soon found that live sport is the perfect media product. Why? It generates a live audience, or creates a live audience that's forced to watch ads, and a really differentiated audience as well. You get people of all types watching the games. Therefore, it's very valuable for advertisers. And cable news broadcasters or satellite broadcasters quickly found that this was a great way to make money, that to fill time, that you could play sporting events that would generate an audience. And because of that, they started to pay more and more money for sporting events. And sporting organizations worked out, well, our main product here is becoming not so much the people in the grounds, but the television audience that we can gather. And so sporting organizations started to change their competitions, their cultures, the way in which games were organized in order to suit that media audience more so than for the good of the game or the in-person audience. And so, like, I think we can see my American football dude in the corner here with the orange gloves. That fellow there is a presence at every game. He calls the commercial breaks. He stops the play because in broadcast deals with the NFL and all their broadcasters, they're required to have ad breaks every so minutes. Sometimes those ad breaks, or most of the time, they come kind of naturally through breaks in play. But if the play hasn't broke, the man with the orange gloves puts his hands up, and the play stops so they can have an ad. And so the whole purpose of this term media sport refers to sport that has become a form of media. Its primary purpose is as a media product. If you think of something like Formula One, yes, Formula One has an in-person audience, but it's trying to drive a media audience which can be sold to broadcasters who can then sell it to advertisers. And so I'm not sure if we watched Drive to Survive, the reality Formula One reality show, but like that link between what do you watch is sorry. Formula One is making its money from its broadcast and through Drive to Survive as much as the actual racing itself. And so with media sport, your considerations are generating that audience. The idea like, what time should we play the game? Should we play at the time that best suits the players? That's not really even a consideration. It's what time will bring in the greatest audiences for us. And so in the article that we looked at, and these are my only kind of writing points, soon I'll move on to others, is that we've developed media cricket with the development of franchise cricket and in particular the IPL. So media cricket, it's not all cricket. It just refers to that cricket which is primarily produced as an entertainment product to be sold to broadcasters. So it's not developed for competition specifically. If you think of like the IL-20, the competition in the UAE, no one's passionately a Desert Vipers fan. It's not played for local audiences. It's created with a specific idea of being sold to broadcasters. That's the whole point of it. We're trying to develop an audience, sell to broadcasters for the sake of profit. And in doing so, I'm arguing this has changed the shape of the game quite significantly. If you think of something like the Hundred was developed with the BBC and free to air broadcasting in mind. It wasn't that they thought, well, 100 balls is perfect for a cricket game. Instead, what, an hour and a half or 3 hours is perfect for a broadcast event. And the colours, the scoring, all of that is made for a broadcast audience, and not just on TV, but for the tickety tock and everyone watching these games on clips. That's the purpose of these kind of events. And so it's really transformed cricket's relationship with place. Like we take here by graphic, we've got New South Wales in Australia. Their traditional colour is blue. The state of origin team plays in blue. The New South Wales cricket team plays in blues. The rugby team, the Waratahs, play in blue. When they created the Big Bash League, the BBL, we now have the Sydney Sixers and the Sydney Thunder. Yeah, colours created to be vibrant on the television. Sure, we want to bring in an in-person audience. We want the kids and the families there. If nothing else, it makes it a better entertainment product. But what they're trying to do is to develop that audience. So the relationship with place has been entirely disrupted. These are not long-standing entities. The Sydney Sixers. There's no rivalry here other than one generated by marketers. And it kind of reaches its apex in these the MI brands. So we take this one here, MI New York, or I don't know if it's called My New York or whatever it's going to be. So that's played in the MLC, the American Major Cricket League. So MI New York does not have a home in New York. Its owners are not from New York. None of the players are from New York. None of the branding is from New York. It has no relationship with New York at all. And this, I think, is completely obvious for many people who are involved in that. Why on earth would it have? We don't watch an IPL game and then think, sorry, there was a little bit of a politics coming up there, and think, well, Chennai might be winning, but none of the players are from this area. It doesn't really matter. They're cheating. That's an absurd question or a complaint in franchise cricket. It doesn't matter where the players are from. In the case of MI New York, it doesn't even matter that they don't play in New York. That relationship to cricket in place has disappeared. Instead, it's the MI brand which matters. So, in this kind of globalized world, it said when I was a young university student, people would ask, does the nation even matter anymore? Do states and territories matter, or are we going to be one big global village? I think politics in the 21st century with Brexit and with Trump and MAGA and with Modi in India, we've had this resurgence of people saying place matters to us, nation matters to us. And it's often phrased at, we reject globalist politics and the global elite. And there's been a return in most cricketing countries to nationalism matters. And what I was really interested in the paper was, well, cricket, this game which once had a very strong relationship to place, is becoming more and more global. That you could have a team with no relationship to the area in which it's played, with players from all over the world, and those national bounds don't matter anymore. But at the same time, our politics, our sense of identity, is more and more returning to local places, whether it's nations or more kind of regional identities. And I was asking, well, what does this mean for cricket? Are we going to be seeing the kind of the death of franchise cricket as people demand more international cricket, as people demand more English players in the 100 or Indian players in the IPL? And what I was suggesting is, well, that's kind of happened, or at least we see bits of it. Like you see in the US, the travel bans are going to affect a number of cricketing nations, but that's not really the main thing that we are seeing. Instead, franchise cricket continues. And what I've argued is that, as I suggested at the top of the show, that franchise cricket or media cricket has actually been a vehicle for Indian nationalism. Like if you watch the IPL, particularly opening ceremonies or around when there's been military conflict, it's a celebration of Indian nationalism. Less so perhaps for other countries. So this nationalism often comes through the sort of media cricket becoming a vehicle for Indian nationalism, comes through the spread of both IPL brands and control, but also cricketing capital. If we take the SA20, the South African 2020 league, that's a big broadcaster, is an Indian broadcaster. Its teams all associated with the IPL. It's media cricket. It's created for sure, they want to bring in local South Africans to watch the games, but predominantly it's trying to generate a subcontinent, particularly Indian cricket audience. And therefore, it's quite flexible to Indian geopolitical desires. And we see this in kind of ICC events in which Indian power has been able to play out in the organization of fixtures. And so this is what I got one more to go, trying to argue in relation to cricket. And I don't want to make it an anti-Indian argument at all. All I'm trying to suggest is that the money which flows from cricket broadcasting, which comes predominantly because 90% of cricketing fans are from the subcontinent, particularly from India, that's where the money is, that has the greatest influence on the way in which cricket's played. And if there is the money behind it, then your forms of nationalism can be expressed. If there's not, nationalism in Bangladesh can be very strong, perhaps, but because it doesn't have the capital behind it, then it doesn't have a huge influence on the game. Whereas that combination of Indian nationalism and um, global corporate backing of franchise cricket has meant that the IPL model has fundamentally changed the kind of rhythm and flows of the game. That perhaps, what was a good example here? That in the 2020 World Cup in the West Indies, I was going to say the latest, but they moved so quickly, I forget. I think it was two ago. The final, I believe, was played at 10 a.m. This is supposed to be the Party World Cup, but that was played to attract an Indian audience. And so in that case, West Indian regional identity or Caribbean individual national identity perhaps doesn't have much power. So we look at the decline of, say, West Indian cricket. Their nationalism hasn't been able to play out. Instead, it's Indian media cricket which has had greater influence. And we see that particularly, well, not particularly, we see that in New Zealand, where I'm from as well, where we've lost the summer. So it used to be in New Zealand in December and January, which are the summer holiday months, we'd have two international touring teams that would come across. Now we don't have that at all. We don't have any international cricket in our peak summer months because those months have gone to the IL20, to the SA20, and to the BBL. So we can't have any touring teams at that time. The IL20 and the SA20, of course, are associated with IPL teams, although the BBL is not. So in that sense, there's this expression of New Zealand identity through cricket has rather disappeared. Instead, we're creating our own competition, the NZ20, which we're told is going to be funded by Indian capital, although we don't know where that's from or how that would play out. So this is my kind of argument around media cricket hitting with nationalism and how that's become a vehicle for Indian nationalism to kind of run the global game, although other forms of nationalism have not been quite so fortunate. But I do want to emphasize, and I think this is the thing we have to think about whenever we talk about cricket, that cricket is often just used to refer to the cricket industry or elite cricket. But for most cricket, like this is me playing Monday night game at Freiburg Park in Browns Bay, 5 minutes down from my parents' place where I used to play, when I was 5 years old, go kick a ball around. We play in a place with local people, and it's expression of local identity. And for most people who play cricket around the world, that is how cricket works out. We're only really talking about the elite levels. All right, well that's sort of enough for me. I've whipped through that fairly quickly. I realized I thought I was sharp, but actually I probably need more coffee to warm up. But I would love to discuss these things with you if you've got any points to challenge or contentions or whatnot. If that's all right with you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That was great, and I mean, I found the paper really interesting and very thought-provoking. I don't know whether there's anybody that wants to start, whether there's anybody wants to respond to any of the issues that Chris raised.
I suppose I'd just say that yeah, I'm entirely in sympathy with what Chris said, but I've always felt that those of us who look askance or skeptically or even hostile to the phenomenon of media cricket, we ourselves sort of buy into the underlying ideology, which is this ideology of growing the game. You hear people speak glibly without a moment's hesitation of the unmitigated good that is. We speak as if we're shareholders, in other words, when we're barely even considered stakeholders. And the truth is really that growth and conservation are often at odds because, growth and dilution are not. Growing the game, it's always seemed to me, means expanding it into new markets, often at the expense of conserving the cultural circumstances that formed it and in which it originally thrived, whereas conservation asks us to protect the integrity of traditions and the rhythms of play and the communities that sustained the sport. Not really a question, I know. I'm frantically racking my brain for a way of formulating it as one, but if you'd pick up that ball and run with it, I'd be very grateful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a particularly conservative person, but I entirely agree with you, Rodney. Growth is cricket's absolute byword. All the ICC stuff is about growth. If we think of these franchise organizations as not run by local boards, they're run by companies. And the essence of companies, of course, is to search for new markets, new products, new fixtures because the IPL has sort of run out of its own window for fuel fatigue and environmental reasons, it's always, the companies that own those teams are always looking to expand. So they're looking for new markets, new teams to take over. And for my work on cricket and climate change, this is obviously an issue because we're looking at just constant expansion of the game. But yes, if you're thinking of cricket as a community thing, which has traditions that should be conserved, that's of no interest to media cricket whatsoever. Because what you're not looking for is to deepen the experience of those who already enjoy, but to bring in new fans and new markets who may not be engaged with the rivalries between county teams that have been around for a century. That's of no relevance to you. We want bright colours and we want to engage new audiences. What those who already exist want is that's fairly irrelevant. I know I've probably just tapped into a hundred culture war there, which you're very welcome to pick up on. But yes, thank you.
Just picking up on that point, Chris. I mean, you talked about the strength of sort of media cricket in India and the sort of the scale of the interest there is in cricket in India and the amount of money that's generated. And in contrast, I think you used the example of the sort of West Indies and the sort of fragility of the game there. But it did make me think quite a bit about the situation in England, which has been I suppose 25 years now. Well, no, less than that. Yeah, no, about 25 years since the T20 started, and it made me think about the fragility of the county system, which obviously, as you mentioned in the introduction to your paper, is deeply rooted in the 19th century. But it struck me that the game it isn't just about the power of the sort of media cricket, but it's actually about the weakness of the traditional game, and in particular, many of the 18 counties are financially very weak in England, but I think they also sort of lack a sort of cultural clout. They're associated with some fairly outdated and unfashionable characteristics. I mean, the very concept of county is increasingly not something that people are particularly concerned about. It isn't something that's necessary. You don't need to write it on your if you post a letter, you don't need to write the county. Lots of people couldn't place lots of counties on the map. County councils are increasingly sort of weak. So the whole sort of concept is not something that's particularly meaningful to many people. The county game is associated with long form cricket. It's associated with lots of with provincial England as to quite a large extent. It's associated with small crowds and as you say, it's associated with people with very well established loyalties who aren't suddenly going to go and shell out on some new flashy, garishly coloured shirt. They've probably there's less sort of they're less malleable, I guess, by as consumers. So and also, I mean, the county game prides itself on being historic, 150 years. A lot of the imagery is very stable. And this isn't really what your sort of companies within the cricket industry are wanting. There's little scope for sort of shaking things up. So it strikes me that there's quite a lot of weakness in the position of the counties. And the other thing that strikes me is I think amongst those who are increasingly running the game and have run the game in the last sort of 10 years, I think there's a sort of there's a lack of confidence in what you might call the sort of Englishness of cricket, county cricket, place-based cricket. And you can see that in the way that, say, for example, when the counties started the T20, a lot of the names that they took were fairly sort of English, Yorkshire Vikings or the Foxes or Hawks or Spitfires. Those sorts of names were used. But when we've moved on to when we've now got the 100, that we've got the sort of, I guess, in a sense, aping of Indian style names, Northern Superchargers and Oval Invincibles and so on. I mean, originally they were sort of linked with particular counties. I mean, it was said, Northern Superchargers was sort of Yorkshire and Durham, and I don't know, Welsh Fire was rather improbably sort of Glamorgan, Gloucestershire, and Somerset. I've noticed over the years that particularly, say, on the BBC website, they've often dropped the place-based, the location. So it's just these concepts, Superchargers playing Rockets or something like that. And I think we've noticed also that these names they don't last very long. So the Oval Invincibles, I think, is now MI London, isn't it? Starting in the summer. And that in itself is a strange title because it isn't. It sort of sounds like it's the London team, but of course it's only one of the London teams, and I'm sure many people north of the river would say, well, it's not even the most important one. So I think it's just interesting how in England, where, as you sort of set out, the game sort of started and grew, the fragility of the place-based concept is still playing its way out. So I don't know whether you've got any thoughts on those sorts of suggestions.
Yes, I've made quite a few notes here. That it's interesting you're saying that we're losing the place-based label, and that's happening in a few different sports. I don't know if we have any very sad Tottenham fans here, but they put out a release fairly recently saying to the media, don't refer to us as Tottenham. We are Spurs, because no one knows where Tottenham is unless you're in London. So as a global brand, they wanted to be Spurs. But yeah, there's a couple of interesting points that I'll try. Will I weave them together? We don't know. One is that we do see in county cricket a lot of the marketing is around it's proper cricket, it's tradition. Perhaps the irony there is that, of course, county cricket, first class cricket around the world is not financially stable. That the players are getting relatively big salaries that are in no way funded by the YouTube audience or the in-person audience. The only way that you're getting paid to play for Gloucester a reasonable amount of money is because it's coming through ICC broadcast rights, ECB broadcast rights, and ultimately those audience, the big source of those audiences is from the subcontinent. It's the rough irony of something like Pakistan, where its money comes from the ICC, and ICC broadcast incomes are predominantly from India. So we have that difficulty that the kind of the maintenance of county traditions is actually funded through this media cricket, and that is part of the 100. Why do we need the 100? Yes, we're appealing to new audience and new fans, but we need it as a revenue generating audience mechanism, which is what the SA20 in South Africa was as well. And so it becomes we'll grow the pie. We want to keep this tradition, but we can only do it by destroying it, and by coming up with the superchargers. And the superchargers will fund what will be Yorkshire and Lancashire, maybe Durham as well. No,
Lancashire, well, Lancashire is something else, isn't it? I can't remember what it's called now.
Yeah, I mean, probably doesn't matter now. But anyway, the difficulty with these 2020 leagues or the franchise leagues in media cricket is just generating those long-standing rivalries, because they are marketing rivalries. And I think this is what hits with a lot of the teams that do we really care about the Oval Invincibles playing the London Spirit or whoever that they'll be now? And it's not just us as cricket badgers, but do the kids care? I mean, this is the question that's come through the BBL that's been running for quite a while in Australia. That even though kids have grown up with the Sydney Sixers versus the Sydney Thunder, they don't bleed that way. There's no Sydney Sixers ultras who come along and start fights with the Sydney Thunder, which is that may be for the better. But if you look at, say, how Australian sport forms, that a lot of those fans of the league teams and the AFL teams, they're really passionate about it. That is a huge part of who they are. But with the BBL, despite it running for quite some time, it's what did a cricket scholar refer to? It's a way to babysit the kids. That you take them on a summer's night, watch the game. It doesn't matter who wins. And this is both a problem for the sport itself, but also for revenue generation. That if no one really cares who wins, if there's no rivalries and there's no relegation, or who won the last 100? I wonder if anyone knows. I certainly don't. If it doesn't matter, if it just becomes literally a brand, then that becomes a problem for the whole of the competition. Because the thing with sport is, if sport is a company, then it's the company that people are most passionate about. No one lives or breathes by Apple. No one spends their $100, has a few pints, screams Apple, and sings songs about how much they hate Samsung. But we'll do that for sport. But the problem with media cricket is it hasn't been able to generate those rivalries. Yet we can media create them, but I don't think people feel them, particularly in the 100. Is that your reading of? I assume this group is predominantly England based. Is there deep rivalries developing in the 100?
Does anybody know?
Is it an absurd question?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure we're the best audience for discussing the 100. I may be completely wrong, but I mean, I think the point you're making, Chris, is a really good one. And I suppose my question is, does that mean what you describe is essentially a rather short-term development? And that's, if it is, it's rather alarming, because there's an awful lot of money at stake here, and an awful lot of change is being introduced. Is the game at risk of, or going down a route which actually isn't sustainable in the sense that, as you say, it isn't generating rivalries. People are not going to make the effort. I mean, yesterday I travelled 400-mile round trip to go and see Yorkshire at Leeds. I wouldn't be doing that for the Northern Superchargers.
Yeah, and this is the argument that like the 100 is still relatively new. People are just growing up with it. But given that the stakes have been sold, it's going to be around for at least a decade, we would think. In a decade's time, are people going to be passionately following their 100 teams? Or is it a competition that's created not for local audiences? But and again, this sounds villainizing, but it's absolutely not. But if your big, valuable audience is in the subcontinent and you're playing a game between whatever entities at the Oval and the entity at Lords, are we playing it for those people, or are we playing it to generate as big an audience overseas as possible? And if we are, then what's the value of that cricket now? Does it just become simply a TV show to be watched?
Does anybody else want to chip in?
Yeah, Chris and Jeremy, Aslam Kota from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Hello.
If you think I'm at a pop concert, I certainly am not. The music's very loud here at the Wanderers Stadium. The fourth T20 International, South Africa, India, the ladies taking place. And so anyway, if you are hearing the music, please pardon me for that. It's been a fantastic presentation, first of all, from Chris, and I've made a few notes here, and obviously we've already covered quite a bit of issues that's come to my mind. And for me, I think what I'd like to start with is how a domestic competition from India has dominated cricket in parts of the world. And as you guys have mentioned, through the media development and media space, the media sports space, it is being sold all around the world. So coming to the SA20, I do feel that we are really held with a gun to our heads here in South Africa, because what I'd like to maybe just raise with you guys is that there are no South African owners in the SA20. There are 6 teams that exist right now. There's talk of increasing it to 8 and taking this concept to the other provinces like Bloemfontein, Free State, and also the Eastern Cape. So I do feel that we are being so dictated. I'm not too sure if you gentlemen are aware that in South Africa, we know that since 1998, we have a quota system here. We have a transformation charter in which the units and unions are all guided by. And when the SA20 was signed on the dotted line between the owners and the group that was then formed as the SA20 in South Africa, which is led by Graham Smith, they do not tolerate quotas. We were told right in the beginning that transformation is not part of the SA20 philosophy. So as far as the wider development and the greater development that is so necessary in our country is actually stifled for the period of the SA20. And now they're obviously jumping hoops to try and see if they can get around it, because I think there's going to be pressure coming from the government. They've not wanted to get they've not been wanting to get involved in it because of the money that's been involved and the fact that it's been so positively received in South Africa. But we do have those issues to deal with, and I think sooner rather than later, I think the matter is going to come to a head. For me, the IPL also dictates fixtures here, and for us in the middle of our summer, the whole season is now being crammed. We saw what happened to South Africa 2 years ago, or just over 2 years ago, when we had to send literally a third tier team to play a test series in New Zealand. All that was because of the SA20 and the fact that the SA20 has to squeeze the fixtures in because it must not clash with the IPL. And what's happened is our international calendar is completely lopsided, it's jammed, and there's no way, I don't think, that Cricket South Africa actually have a plan as to how to address that issue. And that to me is really big, because let's just say, and I know that there are a lot of sponsors cramming to have more teams in the IPL. Imagine if it goes to 12 teams. I mean, in India itself, I reckon they're probably prepared to sacrifice test match cricket and so on, and only look to play those 5-match series against the likes of Australia and England. and that they'll make space for. So for me, it's there's a desperation here, and I suppose in the counties as well, from what I'm gathering, is that we're desperately trying to protect the four-day format, and also as far as funding is concerned, which is what you've just mentioned earlier, with counties in England, is that Cricket South Africa 2 weeks ago have just announced a massive cut in funding. And this is the crux of the matter. There will be no provincial academies anymore. And to me, that is, if funding is a problem, and if SA20 has been this great fillip for the domestic game, why has it not sort of filtered down, or why is it not funding filtering down to the unions? And the reason for that is that the ownership is shared, and there are partnerships involved with foreign owners. And the bottom line is, and this is, I think, the bottom line here, Jeremy, is that if we had South African owners with the money staying inside of South Africa, there would have been funding for the greater good of the game. So I think those issues to me are important to just bring to this discussion, because it is a South African point of view. I mean, as far as the ICC, as far as the BCCI are concerned, and the ICC with them, just coming back to the spirit of the game, they've received the Indians refused to receive the trophy at the ICC Champions Trophy at the presentation. The handshake issue was massive, and for me, if the spirit of the game is allowed to be flouted, who then is going to be the policeman to make sure that doesn't happen to the great game, the historic game, which we love so much? And to me, I believe that the ICC, in this case, are lame duck. They certainly need to do a whole lot more to make sure that the spirit lives longer, and that the cricket is not controlled by outside forces. That is essentially a domestic competition, and then it should be left at that. These are the few notes that I've made, Jeremy. Sorry, I've been a little long in my discussion here, but it looks like the game's about to finish, and that my wife's going to be wanting me to get her home. But I'm around still for at least another 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
Yeah, the interesting bit there, perhaps, if I was Graham Smith, what a thing that would be. But also, he would say we've got no choice but to take on the SA20. I think he said that we lose money on every tour except for India, except for when India visits. We've got massive transformation games, transformation goals. Those won't be fixed only by quotas. Instead, we need funding. The only way we can make funding is through the SA20. And therefore, we've got to throw away all those quota things right now, because we need to make money. And that's the only way we can do these things. Of course, as was just suggested, then perhaps that bargain is not working out as well as it might. And when we're using the term kind of foreign forces, I can understand the nationalism that comes through that. But it's worth remembering that while the original kind of IPL model was, the Bollywood star owning these teams, predominantly or more often they're owned by hedge funds or by various venture capitalist entities whose goal is just to make money. And so, cricket's always had kind of a social purpose to it. And a lot of the justification through, the ECB with the 100, the SA20, is that, yes, we are taking this money, but we're using it to further the game. We're using it to become more diverse. We're using it to break down historical boundaries. And I think that's the tension there of when are we actually giving up through when is that media cricket actually subverting the aim that it's supposed to be working for. I think I need that second coffee this morning. But as you were talking about South African cricket, it certainly brings me back to New Zealand cricket and the way in which we lose our summer, but also our players, like Kane Williamson, our great as ever batter, doesn't play in New Zealand's domestic 2020 competition. Instead, he played briefly in the Bangladesh Premier League, and then we were told he couldn't play international cricket because he had other duties, and it turned out he was in an IPL doing commentary. And yet New Zealand's still playing in Bangladesh at the moment. Brian. Oh, sorry, Jeremy, I'm taking your job here. Stealing.
I was just about to say, Brian's got his hand up, so over to you, Brian.
Yeah, I think it's already happening in England, as the minor counties have been reduced to one-day games. There used to be one of the major things that brought up people through to the county game. all that money's gone from there. The university was another one that the people were used then to go through to the counties. That's all gone. Now, the money that's going to come to local communities from the 100 sale will be very, very interesting. But I do not think they will include those two areas. And I think that is a serious thing that has gone wrong with English cricket, as far as I say.
Thank you, Brian.
Right, can I just step in? It's Peter Huxford. I couldn't get a hand up or anything like that. I know you can't see me. I think you can probably hear me. Is that right?
We can hear you, Peter.
Okay, Chris, absolutely fascinating presentation. And the idea of media cricket is one that's clearly both very persuasive and has become very significant. I'm quite interested in your idea of media sport, though, because from what I could see, your other examples have never been particularly nation-based. So NFL, basketball, I know there's Olympics and a basketball World Cup or whatever, but it's mainly been the American basketball that's been predominant, and Formula One. They've never been really nation-based. The other sort of British Empire expansion sports, to use a horrid phrase, of football and rugby union still seem to remain, or to retain rather, the vitality and the importance of their World Cups. In cricket, it's become the T20 World Cup at the expense of test matches. I wonder if there's any reason why you might think that it's cricket of all the international national team sports that has gone the direction it's gone.
It's an interesting one. So, media sport, it's certainly not my idea. It has a long history, but it's one way of thinking. It might be an extension of the American model, which, as you suggest, is been less based around nation and place, and that model has extended itself into football, perhaps, and into cricket. And one of the interesting things about, say, rugby, and I'm a big rugby fan, is there was a suggestion of was it going to be R360 sort of franchise rugby competition, which never got anywhere. I think because most people would say it needs rivalries, it needs a bit of blood in it. Cricket has become such an interesting example because, as I suggest, it is a place-based game, but it's also one that's gone the furthest to become a media event and become more Americanized. It's created new formats, new cultures specifically for it. But I think the thing that I perhaps missed, and we do still want to have, is that international cricket is perhaps the sport that continues to be the most dominated by international fixtures. While we might be centralizing it around the big three, there's still international cricket going on right now, whether it's South Africa versus India in the women's game or New Zealand versus Bangladesh. It still is a really big form of the game. It hasn't gone away, at least.
Can I say something?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Can you hear me well? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Obviously, that was a wonderful talk, Chris. I am based in Perth, so I'm a couple of hours behind you. But look, I am a Sri Lankan, but I've been to India quite a few times. And in 2024, towards the end, when I went for a conference, I asked many of my Indian friends about this phenomenon, IPL. Now, we heard about IPL a lot, right? If in the recorded thing, this speech, there were a couple of things that really, hit mark. I mean, IPL was mentioned so many times, money was mentioned so many times, apart from media. One of the phenomena that my scientific peers identified was that this phenomenon of IPL is now on the decline. Generally, the crowds, I don't know whether Chris has picked that up 20 years now. I think it's 2006, it started 2006, 7 maybe. So it's nearly 20 years. The crowds that are somewhat declining, that's what they told me. I haven't got the statistics or anything like that. That's more research is needed, I think, in that. Was fueled by the growth and development of the middle class. That I think has been written about quite at length by other people. There is a middle class now, quite significant in India, who can afford to pay for that. It's the social side of cricket is that many of the men who are freaks like us, fans, great fans, come home at 5 o'clock after an extremely hard day in Indian daily life, public servants and so on and so forth. And then to be able for them to go for the match at 7:30 or 8 o'clock and then come home and then again go back to work. So the following day, the match finishes at 11, they get home at 12. So it's causing a lot of tension. I had to pick that up in my casual conversations with the younger people and people of my age group. So basically what I'm saying is this is a phenomenon that came out of the prosperity that India as a country saw, with now 1.4 billion people, big middle class of about 500 million. In countries like Bangladesh, you mentioned, Sri Lanka, certainly I have experience in that phenomenon is not there. We haven't got a middle class, although Sri Lanka just passed, I think, per capita GDP showing a great increase in the last 2 years after all the debacles of the past, just went past 5,000, I think, per capita GDP from about $3,500 per person. But it made a big jump. I'm not too sure whether it will create a big middle class or not. Those who can afford it. And in any case, going back to India, that's what is driving this. But I am certainly seeing a change, not necessarily in the way the cricket is played. We just witnessed the match, where thundering hundreds are made. But I think this is another phenomenon that will gradually plateau out. At the moment, it is still slightly on the increase. Its influence on the rest of the game is extraordinarily significant. But I have a feeling that this will plateau out just like other fads in the world. And it's another phenomenon of not having too much time for anything else. So people just want this instant gratification, and it's a phenomenon of our time. I think still the conservative traditionalists like us will, if we preserve or persevere, I think it'll plateau. That's my observation, and and I'm writing on Ceylon cricket history, and I will talk about it in June. So this is my observation. I think it's another fad. We're going through a period, and a few of these giants are now aging, including Steve Smith and Ben Stokes and a few others. I think we are seeing the negative side of too much cricket. There is too much cricket, just simply too much cricket. And some people in particular, now take the two examples, Sangakkara and Jayawardene from Colombo. They're not the most liked people in Colombo simply because they are extremely, extremely wealthy. That's besides the point. But the contribution to Ceylon's, Sri Lanka's cricket is minimal, and Muralidharan is also in that bracket. And people don't like them anymore. People meaning the younger generation. So they just go there for instant gratification. And I witnessed the match in Pallekele recently. I mean, just crazy cricket. And behavior is just like typical of our current generations. There is no interest in anything more than just instant gratification. Sorry if I took too long.
No,
but I thought
I appreciate the 2:30 wake up if you're in Perth. Yeah, I mean, 2 points on that. One would be that I think there was a fear, perhaps in some parts of the world, in which, well, why won't the IPL become like the Premier League? Why won't it just play for 6 months and then we'd lose all our summer? But we're clearly reaching a saturation point there. I'm not sure that we can call the IPL a fad. If it is, it's a long fad, and I'll be interested to see what comes. But you can see here how the IPL just gets replaced by the SL20 or the WIPL, and the season gets extended, but in a fresher way. But yeah, the interesting point you're making there about the saturation of cricket, I think for many of us, it becomes just a background filler. Like I often turn the IPL on at 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever time my kids get me up. I have no idea what's really going on. I'm not invested in it. Every now and again, I'll look up for a certain time of matchup, but it just becomes this sort of background ephemeral type of event rather than something we're particularly invested in. And that's that question of whether once it becomes just background, do we start checking out entirely, and does it grab new generations? And I think that's probably a question that a lot of marketers are are concerned about.
Rodney, you've got your hand up. Do you want to
I
come in?
do, yeah. You invoked Graham Smith earlier, Graham Smith and his now annual Thatcherite tribute act. There is no alternative. The most remarkable thing about this ideology, it seems to me, is how unshakable it is, even in the face of several decades evidence. I mean, perhaps I'm missing something, but media cricket seems always to be framed as the solution to the problems it creates. The more these franchise leagues proliferate, always in the name of preserving the heritage formats, the more precarious they make those formats. And therefore, by the unshakable logic of the people who make these decisions, the more franchise cricket we need.
Yes, absolutely. There's no sense, and I got this with debates around the 100, selling private equity, and we also have it with creating the franchise competition in New Zealand. There was no sense that something is being lost when these competitions are created and when private equity comes in. It's just money will come into the game, and that will be a wonderful thing. And as Rodney and others are suggesting, there's no particular evidence that it does improve community cricket or the traditional forms of cricket that perhaps we are more interested in. And yet it's hard to see how there might be an alternative. And yeah, perhaps there is something, there are shades of this. And this is why I wanted to emphasize that most cricket still continues to be place-based. I'll leave it at that, but I think it's really worth considering that for most people, media cricket is not cricket.
Russ, would you like to?
Yeah, I did. I don't know if you still have time for a pseudo question, because again, like that, I don't really have a sharpened question. It's just ask you to react to the concern that I have. Which, by the way, I really enjoyed your paper and helped a lot in thinking some of these issues that concern me. The main one is, as people said, and I think you dramatized it pretty well back there when you said, well, where's the 100 going to be in 10 years' time? And you could extend that then to other forms of cricket. And what concerns me is multi-day cricket going to be preserved? And how's that going to happen in this new world of franchises? And my concern, I've lived most of my life now in North America, which is dominated by franchises. And what it comes down to is access to the sport. How do we get from what you've pointed out? Most cricket isn't at the elite level. It's local based, probably playing in evenings, on weekends. How do you channel that into 4 and 5 day cricket? And that's my concern. I don't see a channel in a world dominated by franchises. Franchises are going to take over both the players and the venue. And since they're investment based, people are going to want their money back. So eventually I see multi-day cricket just being squeezed out in terms of talent. You're not going to get young people coming along with the ability to play multi-day cricket because they don't have anywhere to do it. So that's, in a very nutshell, my concern. How do you react to that?
Yeah, I mean, you might see that some of this money comes to fund multi-day cricket, but not the development of it. That we can say we'll fund the county game, but not the second 11 game or academies that lead into it. And instead, if we follow the American model, and probably the safest explanation would be that more Anglo sport will become Americanized and follow that model, then the development of sport becomes the development of players for those franchises, that it becomes academies to develop sports people rather than local governing bodies developing the game for the good of it. And therefore, what interest do they have in developing patience and 4-day or 5-day cricket innings? Instead, if they're getting the best athletes at 11 or 12 or younger, they're going to develop them for a specific purpose. And this is the dance which is going on, is saying, well, we recognize that model. The ECB might say, we're going to take the money, we're going to carve off this area and say, we're selling, was it July and August to you? And we're going to use that money to fund the game. Whether that July-August model will eat into it is really a question, eat into the rest of it is really a question for the future. But I don't see how, I mean, the difficulty that others would suggest is, well, there's no money in other models. what's the alternative here? And that's the difficult reality, perhaps. I don't
Thank
like
you. Yeah,
using
that's
that word
a
reality because it does get us to that there is no alternative. Sorry, Ross.
no. You put it very well. I might say I think of like baseball, but actually it's true of the other franchise-based sports as well. Everything is directed up to the franchise. It's I don't know if you saw the movie Bull Durham, which I think looks like people didn't. So now the major league is characterized as the show. You get to the show, and beneath that there are tiers of minor leagues all sitting down below it, but they're all just complete reflections of the show. We don't have that in cricket. You know, the 4 or 5 day game is not remotely like T20. It's I mean, yeah, at a very technical level, you have strokes and you have techniques of bowling and so on, but the ability to build an innings or the ability to bowl over several days is just simply not there. So that's my because I think I see the franchise model as gradually swallowing up even the possibility of the 4 or 5 day game.
Yeah, and I think my argument would be, or has been, that this franchise model is following that way because it's in search of the money. Why is it in search of the money? Because it's owned by hedge funds, venture capital things. And if there isn't the money in the 4 day game, well, of course it's not going to invest in it. And the tension we have here is that an entity like the ECB, its strategic plan, Inspiring Generations, is specifically growing the game for the good of the game. It's expanding it. It's embedding traditions. And when you get these two models colliding, it's difficult to see how the Inspiring Generations model wins over, really. But maybe I'm feeling pessimistic because it's early in the morning here.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thank you, Russ. Is there anything else anybody wants to say? Anybody that hasn't had a chance yet?
Can I have a final say? Just say thank you very much to Jeremy and Rodney for organising this. And when I mentioned in my various cricket group chats that I was going on this panel, there was much excitement for me, and I just really appreciated the engagement here. I know it's a Saturday night and things, but it's a pleasure to talk cricket with people who love cricket. And whilst it's easy to become negative about it, there is a joy in our game, and I think that kind of that hope, while maybe the thing which gets you, is worth hanging on to. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Chris, thank you very much for this evening, for speaking so eloquently, and also with so many really provocative ideas. And as I say, I really enjoyed your paper, so much so that I actually rushed out and have a copy of your book, which I'm looking forward to.
There's so few printed, we could call that a special edition, and you can justify the price.
I think, well, no, well, it's a softback, I'm afraid. I did notice it a couple of years ago, and I thought that looked very interesting. But I think with it being Routledge, it was 150 quid hardback or something. But the softback is obviously a lot cheaper. But I'm looking forward to reading it. Just one coincidental thing to encourage people to have a look at. Today's Guardian has an article by Barney Ronay entitled "Cricket's April Wasteland: Cook and Peterson row like barbecue dads in the battle for Bethel." It's free on the Guardian website to read, and it's actually very relevant to this evening's discussion. And interesting. Basically, it's some kind of confected argument between Kevin Peterson and Alistair Cook about what Jacob Bethel should be doing now. Should he be warming a bench in the IPL, or should he be slogging it out in the county championship for Warwickshire? And I think it picks up quite a few of the themes we've talked about this evening. So unless there's anything anybody else wants to say, I would like to thank you very much, Chris, on behalf of all of us here and also the ACS. This is going to go on our website. So I think, Rodney, it's going to go on our YouTube.
It's going everywhere, yeah.
Everywhere. So there will be a lot of other people that will have the benefits of everything you said. So thank you very much. And well, enjoy the rest of your day, which is it's all ahead of you, whereas for some of us it's nearly bedtime.
Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much.